Hey. So this wasn't really a video I wasn't expecting to make any video today, but yeah, Rudy made two community posts, well, mostly one that I was gonna react to or whatever, but then he made a video. There's a few topics I figured it was easier to talk about rather than write or whatever, so I was like, all right, as is usually the case. Um, But yeah, Rudy made two community posts. At least the one was like a day ago, but then the other one he just made recently. But this recent one, he did link something interesting, um, even though it's not really a topic that I personally have that much like interest in. It is just kind of one of those things to it. It's good to keep in mind. Uh, That's the title, 10 Disadvantages of Being the Child of Rich People. It's good to keep in mind that, I guess, in this place, like, everybody, pretty much no matter who or what assumptions you make based on their background or, like, their seeming financial stability or whatever, what family they've come up in, pretty much everyone in this place suffers in some way or hurts in some way or whatever is has hardships no matter what, I guess. Like even if even if everybody sees those hardships in different ways, like they see them as like, oh, that's not really a hardship or whatever compared to what I've had to have gone through or whatever. Um but I guess we'll listen to it a little bit
A few people
because
have asked,
it is an interesting topic, I guess, and somewhat related to certain things I've um, heard as of recently, I guess, as well.
that I make a video on rich people's problems. A dangerous subject. I think most people don't really particularly want to empathize with the potential problems of rich people.
And yeah, I have no idea who this guy is. Like, this is literally the first time I've seen his channel and this guy. But Rudy just linked the video, so yeah, I don't know. I mean, he seems reasonable at the very least.
But the more I've thought about it, the more I found one area in this subject matter that really calls to me. I've observed it a lot.
And you know what I'm gonna do? Since I've already listened to this, but I don't normally do this, but I'll change this to be a little bit faster if I remember how to do that. Uh, 1.5 maybe. See how it goes.
And that's the disadvantages for being the child of a rich person. Not that it's entirely disadvantageous to be the child of a rich person. There can be a lot of obvious advantages: better food, better schools, living in a safer environment, etc., etc., etc. If you have medical problems, a lot of times they're treated in a much better and quicker way. But I've also really seen so many children of rich people having such obvious disadvantages, and I would like to do my best to explore them. So the first one that I've seen, not all rich people's children, but a lot, end up socially isolated, socially alienated even. Think about my travels. Sometimes I've lived with rich people, and they live in compounds a lot, where there's a wall and a gate and a fence and a locked door, and the children are essentially locked into a kind of prison. I've seen.
When I listened to this part, I don't know why it made me think of in 1984 with the main character Winston. His living situation is like much more. Yeah, he wouldn't be upper class, but I guess he'd be kind of like in the middle or upper middle class, kind of in that society or whatever. Maybe even lower middle. I don't know, but he's like definitely more in the middle class sort of thing. Um, but at least from what I remember, he himself seemed extremely socially like isolated in his environment or whatever, in his the way he had stuff um, in his life, the way he like worked and everything. It was fairly socially isolated. But then when he went to and I guess that's not a great example because yeah, he wasn't rich. He was just kind of like middle class, but probably more on the slightly upper middle class. Um, but then when he went to the like the poor section with the poor part of the city or town or whatever the city he was in, it was like the proles or whatever, the proletariat, and those were like the much more poor like ghetto kind of environment. But all the people there seemed to be much happier generally, or at least happy in their ignorance of what the system was and everything, I guess, or like they kind of lived outside of it more so than the people that Winston was involved with, like the middle class. They were more stuck in the system, whereas the proles, they just kind of like the system just ignored them in a sense, but which also kind of gave them like freedom. And these people seem to be generally more happy than people like Winston, that were stuck in the middle of the system. But they were also less socially isolated because they were all just like, kind of as he mentions here, where you got just kids kind of like running around and everything, playing and all that shit together. It just kind of made me think of that, which was curious.
Seen this a lot. And you see the children of poor people, the poor kids outside, all playing in groups and playing games and having fun. And the rich little kid is inside, all alone, maybe playing video games or watching a television. And maybe all the poor kids secretly want to be watching this, but the child is lonely and just wishes he or she could go out and play with the other kids, socialize, be normal, fit in, have fun. And in terms of their emotional development, it works against them. Another thing I've seen is a lot of the children of rich people don't get good parental role models. One is like if the parents work really hard to earn their riches, a lot of times the parents or one parent is basically never there, basically abandoning their children to the care of nannies and au pairs, paid people, people who are paid to raise their children. And while, yes,
I've never heard of that term, au pairs. I know nannies, but never au pairs. Kind of strange. Um, but yeah, I get obviously. I mean, I think in any family there seems to be more and more lack of any kind of role models or whatever, good, decent role models. And that's why so many kids, at least they used to, I don't know about anymore, because the way the media is now, but they used to, the kids would kind of default, would have their role models be stuff like these fictional characters, like these ideals, like Superman. Um, that was usually the one I could think of, like Superman, and sometimes even these stupid uh sports sports ball celebrities like basketball players and shit. I mean, and that's even one of more of the things that has been fucked up in this modern times is like now even these quote unquote people that used to be considered like role models, like let's say maybe like Michael Jordan, like so many of them are now kind of like becoming, as Matt would call them, like bums. Like they're not good role models, even if they're in these positions of like these celebrity positions and sports positions and stuff. Um, so all that's been broken down even more. So now these kids have even less people that they can kind of latch onto to for role models. Um, so now the kids have like no role models now. I guess kind of now they're kind of role models might be these people like these influencers, like these fucking people like Jake Paul or these other schmucks that you see online and TikTok and whatever, like these social media platforms.
talked to quite a few grown-up people who were rich when they were younger, in rich families who had nannies and au pairs who they said they loved.
Oh yeah, and that was the other thing. He talks about that with these people, these kids that grew up in rich families or whatever, like they have no role model. But then I'm just like, well, they have no role model because maybe their parents are like somewhat absent because of working and stuff. But which, yes, I can understand that was that sometimes depending on the way that they have gotten their money, the parents of these kids, um, they probably have to sacrifice more of their time to sustain whatever income that they have, like with whatever job that they're doing. Like they might have to be constantly out more, do more hours, whatever, that kind of thing. Sacrifice their quote unquote free time for their jobs. But I could say the same thing could be seen from any other just normal, like quote unquote normal, like lower class, middle class, like jobs and stuff. Um, when you're working 8, 10, 12 hour days and overtime and stuff, like what time do you have to spend with your kids in the same way? That's just kind of how I'm looking at it. So it's like that's kind of like a universal thing, no matter what background, I think.
I've also talked to a number of them who said, I wasn't loved by these people who were paid. These people were paid and just did their job, or even overtly resented me. That sometimes these nannies.
I mean, you gotta be a real fucking idiot to think that just someone could be like a surrogate mother or father, like a nanny or whatever, and you can just pay them to take the role of that for your child. Like, you got to be real fucked in the head to think that. And apparently, so many of these people do think that they can just send their kids to like these daycares for their most of their lives and shit. And just, I mean, people already do that. That's having to send their kids to like the school system, like works as a pseudo like parent in a way, in the most fucked up way.
Had their own children somewhere else far away, and someone was raising them, and they were being paid to raise me, and it was so unfair. It was so terrible, and sometimes the nannies, on an emotional level, really took it out on the children. But sometimes also faked being loving, faked being caring, but be our live-in au pair. She will be that au pair's one-year contract. And the children go through a young woman, 19, 20, 18 years old, even comes from Europe, comes in. I've heard a lot of these stories, and it's like, it's really a twisted way to raise children. It's traumatizing. Then another problem that children of rich people have is the world doesn't empathize. The world instead is jealous of them and says, you have every advantage of the world. You have the best clothes and the best computers and the best phones.
I think, I think this, I think this Rudy might know more than anybody else uh, that'll be listening to me. I don't know if you saw those cartoons when you were a kid, but I certainly did, like stuff like the Fairly Odd Parents on Nickelodeon and shit. Um, it used to be pretty popular back then, but now I don't even know. It probably still gets ran. Who knows? Uh, but that was like when you kind of look at it, kind of one of the biggest themes of that show was like how uh, uh it wasn't the biggest theme, but it was a pretty big one. Like Timmy Turner, the main character, his parents were obviously neglectful in most cases, but yeah, his parents were obviously neglectful in most cases. That's why he got the two his fairies or whatever, because his parents were pretty shitty and they just kind of, yeah, they did. They let Vicky she was the what do they call that? The day babysitter, she or whatever. She was the babysitter that would always be coming there because the parents were being neglectful of him or whatever. They were doing their own shit, either working or whatever. Um, but then in the off cases, they would show that, supposedly that they really loved Timmy and all that. They were just apparently they were just that stupid or whatever. But I mean that doesn't really excuse that. But then you had other characters like that also had fairies, like what was it? What was it? Remy Bags of Plenty? Yeah, I think it was Remy Bags of Plenty or whatever. He was the like the rival of Timmy, or yeah, he was basically the rival of Timmy in that his parents were extremely rich, but at the same time they were still even more, probably even more neglectful of him than they were of Timmy, in a way that they were just rich and he had everything he wanted, but he didn't get the love that he desired the most from his parents and shit. Uh, and I guess that kind of dynamic or whatever, that kind of theme can be shown in that, where it's like people probably wouldn't be able to empathize with that character as much, even though that the show tried to do that by saying like, hey, look, he has fairies and he's a rich kid, but it doesn't matter because he's even more fucked up than these other kids because his parents are neglectful and messed up just in the same way. Just a note I wanted to make that made me think about that show right away. I was like, oh yeah, that show had a lot of kind of themes of that, like show had a lot of themes of that, just like kids being neglected by their parents. Like, I mean, that was kind of the whole idea of the show, is that the kids got the fairies because they were in a fucked up household, pretty much. And that was like the fairies were kind of the cope for the kids to deal with that until they became adults, I guess. Which is curious because the fairies go away after they become adults, but then it's like, well, did the kid actually get any better for that? It's kind of like as soon as they become adults, they're gone. So then it's like, well, now the kid's just left to the vultures, like fucked with whatever after that point. That's kind of weird when you, definitely weird when you think about it that way.
And the best this and the best vacations. Why are you complaining? Why are you complaining? Because they're not seeing these children for the real deficits in their lives. Then I think about another thing. The rich parents saying, oh, my child is having problems now. My child is expressing the effects of their neglects and their violations, and they're expressing the consequences of my failure as a parent. Well, I'm just going to throw money at it. I'm going to send them to psychotherapy, and I can afford the best psychotherapy and the best child psychologist and the most expensive. And I've seen many, many times the best psychotherapist is the psychotherapist who will never challenge the fundamentals of this system. Instead, what the parent really does is they buy a psychotherapist who will bullshit the parent and bullshit the child. They're paying someone a lot of money to go along with the sickness of the system, to not call out the fundamental problems that are going on in the system, not call out the fundamental abandonments and neglects and even overt violations that the parents are committing. Instead, they're paying this therapist to shut up. And I've seen it with a lot of these therapists.
That made me think right away of my mom going to a therapist the past few, like, probably like 2 years, maybe even less than that, I forget, but she's been going to a therapist. And even though it's not like some like super expensive therapist thing or whatever, it's still paying, not like, what is it, like $250 like a visit, basically, for like mostly bullshit. And yeah, that's how these therapists, almost all of them, seem to work, from what I've heard from others that have gone to therapy, and from my own experience. Even when I was younger, when I was sent to therapy for from the by the school system or whatever, and seeing from my mom and the outcomes is, I mean, in my opinion, I'd say almost all of the, like, 95% of these therapists are just complete bullshit. They don't help any of the people that they actually are, like, doing or like being a therapist to. But in my mom's case, I could see it, like, just straight up. There, it's never just like with the boomer shit. Like, my mom will talk about everybody else, but she won't talk about, like, herself or point at herself. I mean, this is just how boomers are, and so many people. She doesn't look in the mirror, and the therapist doesn't encourage her, or it doesn't. They don't question it and then say, like, maybe there's something that you have to do. Instead, this therapist just kind of agrees with her and reinforces that BS shit where it's everybody else that's wrong, or it's everybody else's problem. That's that their their shortcomings are your problem, not your own, not something you have to look at. Uh, so from my experience, it's just not even, it doesn't even have to be these rich parents or these rich groups that you therapists that these therapists that are dealing with rich people. It's just therapists in general, for the most part, or don't do what they should be doing, most likely. And probably the ones that do just get, the people that are going to therapy, they don't want to hear the truth, so they just hire somebody else that will bullshit them, basically.
Therapists who take the children of rich people. The therapists like the money. They're addicted to the money. And what they do, respect in the mental health field. And I think about my own
And psychiatric drugging, or whatever they're talking about here. Yeah, that's I experienced that right away with when I went to therapy. Is like almost the first thing that they tried to go to. Obviously, is pushing the Ritalin, ADH, the Ritalin and the Adderall and all those bullshit pharmaceutical drugs, quote unquote, solutions. Yeah, right.
Observations, watching people out in the world, especially in poor countries, where the more money families have, the more likely it is their child who is having problems being an expression of what's going on inside of the family system. That child is going to get a psychiatric diagnosis and is going to end up in the office of a psychiatrist and is going to end up on a psychiatric medication or 2 psychiatric medications, or when that doesn't work, the psychiatrist is saying, well, you know, they're having this problem and this problem, not saying it might be resulting from the drugs, and certainly not saying it's resulting from the emotional dynamics going on within the family system. Instead, oh no, we need to give this kid another diagnosis and another drug. And I've seen this with a lot of the children of rich people in poorer countries especially, but sometimes in America too. They end up going down the slippery slope and becoming psychiatric patients. And no one ever says, what is the fundamental emotional dynamic problem in this family? And when the people have more money, well, a lot of times the mental health professionals are more likely to side with the people who have the power in the system, the parents, because it's financially to the advantage of the professional. And also it's dangerous to the professional if they start calling out the parents. Well, immediately, one thing is the first thing the parents do, often I've seen this, is when the parents get criticized and the therapist who's being paid a lot of money says, no, it's not appropriate what you're doing. You're being deficient, you're neglecting your child, you're abandoning your child. All your money is not helping you be a better parent. The parent gets offended and, well, the simplest thing that they do is they can pull the child out of therapy immediately. This is not what I'm paying for. And they also can criticize the therapist, and they have more power in the
That's almost exactly what I said just before, but, you know.
System, even more legal power to go after the therapist's livelihood. And certainly they're not going to be referring all the children of their rich friends to this therapist or this psychiatrist. And I also think that a lot of times the mental health professionals who end up working with rich people have less integrity, are the kind of people who it is easier to buy their lies, buy their bullshit, buy their manipulations, get them on their side. I think sometimes when people, well, who have less money go to therapy, there's less, well, there's a less of a financial incentive for the therapist to bullshit, and they can be more direct about what's really going on. Now, another problem that I have seen with the children of a number of rich people is that on an emotional level, they can inherit the arrogance of their parents who...
Yeah, I could see this in, I might have mentioned this before, I could see this in my uncle's daughters, his 2 daughters, because, when my uncle's ex-wife divorced him, obviously she would still be trying to be involved with their 2 daughters that they had together. And now that her 2 daughters are adults, she's had much more brainwashing and influence to keep the 2 daughters on her side. And this, I guess you could say my ex-aunt or whatever, she was a rich kid, basically. She was an extremely arrogant, narcissistic kind of piece of shit, the way she acted and the way she grew up. And she acted the same way when she became adult. But now I can see that in my 2 cousins, that, you know, their 2 daughters, I could see them acting in an extremely similar way to her, basically. And it's like, yeah, I I don't see them having a very happy adulthood after their mother is gone or whatever. Not because they not because they won't be financially well off, but because I could just see them not really developing very well as mature adults, I would say. I personally think, at least they've just kind of been extremely brainwashed their entire lives with the rah-rah girl boss feminism shit, and so much of the other like bullshit stuff that the society's been pushing, like all that stuff. So I don't see them having very good outcomes at the end of the day, just because I could see that they might be fine financially, but probably socially and mentally they're probably not going to be very happy in the end, I think.
Who think that just by nature of being rich, they're better people, they're better than others. And a lot of poor people can think this about rich people too. It's better than yours, and it is a lot better. Start transitioning into adulthood. It can be a pretty rough transition, especially if they haven't built up a skill set in terms of a trade at one level, or an emotional skill set even, to figure out how to, well, achieve the lifestyle, the financial lifestyle that their parents have. It can be very hard for them to go to work and do lower paying jobs, like a lot of us who grew up who didn't have money have to do, working in restaurants and doing delivery work and cleaning up after people and washing dishes and doing things that, well, a lot of rich children have never done and don't want to do. They want to skip the line like their parents have the liberty to do. And by skipping the line, or wanting to skip the line, to not do the work that young people a lot of times have to do while they're getting their education, while they're building up their skills. A number of children, rich kids, who grow up and become trust fund kids and want to skip the line and want to start their own businesses and grow their weaknesses.
I feel I think I said mostly what I want to say on this. It's definitely an interesting video and topic, but I'm kind of losing what feel like I was gonna say at the end here on it, so I think I'll just skip the rest of it and say that's good enough. But yeah, interesting video and topic. I think it's just one of those things that people really have to realize that like everybody, no matter like what their background is or what they grew up in, has problems, and in some cases, the ones that you think have the less problems actually have more problems due to their upbringing. Like just because you got money or whatever, just because you have these resources, doesn't really mean shit at the end of the day. It kind of comes more down to kind of the character of the individual at the end of the day, I guess, more than anything. I think, at least. And Rudy, the other thing that you mentioned, which is the first one I was gonna talk about, was the this other community post you made. What was it? The hints of recycled stalled century are there. It's pretty funny to see this in the video game world. Um, yeah, and I basically kind of said what I wanted to say, but yeah, it is fucking weird, man. Uh, that these remasters. I don't want to say even I don't want to even really include remakes, even though it's kind of the same thing, because when you think about it, a remake is like actually just kind of taking something almost like the IP and the idea and just trying to like make it in a modern way. Whereas with these remasters, they're taking basically verbatim the old thing, but just kind of putting a new coat of paint on it. Um, and then just advertising it as something new, even though it's not. Like this Oblivion remaster is the exact same game at the end of the day. It just has some quote unquote improvements made. But yeah, people are like talking about it again, even though this is a fucking like 20. Let's see. Oh yeah, you mentioned the date. That's what I was gonna forget. Is this is for the other video, but you mentioned like DLCs and like the microtransaction stuff. So Oblivion, Elder Scrolls. This game was actually released in originally was released in like apparently March 20th, 2006. March, April, May. March, April, May. So wow. Yeah. So it wasn't 20 years old when they made this remaster. It was 19. Isn't that funny? 19 is one of those numbers. Yeah. Who could have guessed? But yes, this game was made after 2001. Um, the 7-Eleven job application or whatever. But this was kind of one of the original games where people started to. This is kind of one of the original games that people started to talk about uh, the whole microtransaction thing, because this is also the game that was like the first game to have kind of that kind of micro DLC or whatever, like micro purchases, that being stuff like the horse armor. Yeah, it did have the more conventional DLC, um, with the like the Shivering Isles and a few other things, but it was the first game to kind of popularize the kind of microtransaction thing, such as with the stupid horse armor shit. It was one of the more prevalent examples at the time, especially. But I mean, to be fair, even before 2000, they had games that did stuff like this, like stuff that I don't even remember, stuff that I wasn't even born near around. Stuff like these old games that were still on the floppy disk system. You'd get the game and you'd have like fucking 6 different floppy disks the game would come with. You'd have to have one in there for like you'd have to keep swapping it while you were playing and stuff for the different assets to be loaded and shit, code and everything. But then it would come with like physical material, books, and even the stupid privacy or piracy prevention bullshit, codes and shit like that. Um, but I think even some of these had that kind of stuff. But it kind of made more sense back then because they were much smaller games, and they had much less space to work with. So they kind of might have to split the stuff up into multiple different games or whatever to do what they wanted. But in a lot of cases, most of the time, that's done just for money, not for the good of the customer or whatever, or out of like primarily like necessity, like it needs to be done. Um, but I think even those had certain things like the other. But yeah, obviously nothing even close to the system we have now, or like even back then, say in Oblivion, where it was like this. But these transactions, you already had the game, but to get the game in its fullest form, you had to pay even more money with these microtransactions and shit. So nothing even close to that before 2000s. Um, but I'll talk about that more fully later. But yeah, on the Oblivion thing, it is funny. Like, oh yeah, people talking about stuff. Like, oh yeah, when I first played Oblivion, like I did stuff like training sneak skills, sneaking up against a wall and with a rat in the other room and just getting my sneak skill up the entire time and shit. But then nearly basically 20 essentially 20 years later, that stuff is still being talked about um now as if it is like a new thing, and it's like, no, it's not. That's been around for like 20 years basically. Ooh, neck kink. But then yeah, the stalled century stuff, just recycling this shit over and over. Like, it's been fucking 20 years. People are still now they're talking about it in like a fresh light just because of this remaster, and it's just how it worked for like all this bullshit. Um, and it is really weird and really like creepy or whatever when you think about it. It's like, wow, it's just fucking literally recycling these ideas every like 10, 20 years or whatever, just over and over. It's just fucking the strangest shit. But now let me get to, I guess, the main thing I was gonna react to. I didn't think I was gonna get sidetracked at all by those other stuff, the rich person thing, but I said fuck it. But your video, your digital media and its broken promises, and that is a very good. Yeah, really. 8 minutes in, and the dream is sounding like reality. Yeah, I'm like, I was listening, and I was just like, your dream, this nightmare or whatever, this dream you're in, doesn't sound much different than what we already got. It doesn't sound that much different. Um, oh damn it! But shit, I was gonna say something. Oh yeah, your thumbnail was a very fitting thumbnail. The bread, you know, the old games they used to, you just pay once and you get the entire loaf of bread. Now you pay 20 different payments or 20 different types of payments over like all these different things just to get a quote unquote complete piece of the bread.
Hey, what's up, guys? I wanted to talk about a dream I had last night. It was very, very bizarre. Um, it was about video games, and it's really weird because I don't normally have dreams about video games in any capacity. Um, and this is kind of like later in the day, so it's been about 10 hours since I had the dream. So, but I remember the gist of it. And this is going to seem, for the non-gamers out there, this may seem strange, but Kirk will probably understand what I'm talking about. But I wish I could remember specifics, so I'm just going to give like the vibe that the dream had rather than...
Yeah, I wish I made notes while I was listening to this. I was gonna listen to it a second time, but I just said fuck it. I'll just react to it directly, but I'm sure I'm going to forget something that I was gonna mention at some point while listening to this. I just got that feeling. So I'm thinking right now. I'm like, there's stuff that I wanted to talk about that I probably forgot. So just a note on that.
Then any kind of specifics. I'm opening a blind bag right now. It's like a kitty cat blind bag. It's called Tasty Peach. Yeah, Tasty Peach. It's like Meowchi surprise plush. Collect all 5 blind box minis in series 2. I think this is series 1.
And speaking of that, like, isn't it amazing that how, I mean, I guess that kind of shit, the gambling or the surprise thing has been around for like the longest time. Like even I remember even with those like vending machines that they still have them. It's just I remember this when I was a kid, the stupid vending machines that would have that stupid plastic like egg thing, and then you'd open it and it'd be like, you know, a random like junky action figure or some bullshit. You know, they've had this shit for so long, but it's just evolved more and more. Like now you got stuff like those. They were definitely more popular a few years back, but they're still a thing. Like those stupid uh loot box. I think they might have just called them like loot boxes, but basically the physical loot boxes, quote unquote, where it would just be like a loot. It would just be a box that would come in the mail, like a subscription thing that you'd have, and then it would come in the mail, and then it would just come with like usually a bunch of garbage, like cheap stuff that would come in the mail that would be cheaper than it was actually like for them to, the stuff in total was cheaper for them to give you than it was for you to pay for the subscription. Basically just a bunch of random junk like Funko Pop and fucking other crap plastic shit. But you know, like end of the day, it's kind of just like a gambling. It's another gambling thing. It's like a physical loot box, um, and it is weird how this has just become so normal. Like, I want to make a mental note about that with TF2 because I just thought about it. But Team Fortress 2 loot boxes, Valve. Um, Hopefully, I'll remember to talk about that at the later. But yeah, it's just so strange that that has just evolved into this giant thing now. Like everything almost has become like a loot box or a gambling in some way. It's fucked up.
Total waste of fucking money, but it's a cute little kitty cat plush. So I'm gonna open it real quick before I get into what I'm about to talk about. Let's do it. I'm gonna put cats on my dash. What people think, y'all should know. I guess I can give a little background. I use Steam. Valve, the company Valve, runs a video game distribution, kind of third-party distributor called Steam. It's basically like a storefront for publishers and developers to put their games on, whether it be AAA publishers or, you know, indie developers or whatever. So I had a dream that.
And Steam, I mean, it's not. It probably doesn't need to be said, but yeah, Steam has just become like the monopoly of the video game digital storefront.
And I wish I could remember what the game was, but just to give an example of the vibe of the dream, it was like every game on Steam in the future, once the tricks or whatever, like it was that vibe in the dream where it's like everybody was interconnected, right? And
You kind of almost, well, I mean, I think this theme has been done like, you know, everywhere. Obviously, repeating themes, copy paste reality, but the stupid what was the fucking game? Shadowrun. Shadowrun. I played the more modern version of Shadowrun, not the one on the Super Nintendo. Uh Not the most modern, but it was like the first one of the modern version of Shadowrun that they kind of started making. I'm sure they had like a bunch of games after that of the same vein, but it was on the PC, and it was like Shadowrun, that being the cyberpunk kind of dystopia theme, but with orcs and elves and stuff, like the high fantasy mixed with the high fantasy mixed with the sci-fi cyberpunk stuff. Um, Kind of interesting. I like when I look. I wasn't even able to finish the game because I got to a section that was so like long and obnoxious, and then I had a game breaking bug at the end of that section. So then I had to load a save and then redo the entire thing. Basically, I just said fuck this after that. Shows you that game bugs can make you just say fuck this. Uh, and in fact, it did. But until that point, I was mostly enjoying the game. It was interesting. But yeah, I didn't get past that point. Um, but I guess people would like that was the thing that was one of the big themes or whatever that they tried to pass in that game was people plugging in digitally to basically live vicariously through like other people's lives like I mean, people already do that today when you think about social media, that being quote unquote living vicariously, like just listening to these stupid influencers and then like basically trying to think that that's what they can experience and trying to live vicariously through that social media nonsense lies that these people post on there. It's essentially the same thing. It's not like literally like you have VR goggles on and you're not in some pod experiencing that or whatever. But that's kind of what the Shadowrun stuff was mainly trying to talk about was that kind of stuff. People getting addicted to being living vicariously through these people in these pods and shit, through these VR simulation things. Um, but what you're kind of describing makes me think of something like that almost, where people would just kind of like everything would be free. I mean, once again, the comparisons, you're saying like everything being free, but then you have to pay all these things. It just makes me think of right away what Microsoft has done with the Game Pass shit, the whole Game Pass thing, where you're able to pay this monthly subscription to access like all these different games with like just a month, just that monthly fee, but you could access like all these hundreds of different games through this Game Pass shit. Um, and I'm sure on that Game Pass, or maybe that's what is eventually going to be the main thing. Eventually, I'm sure that'll be the main outcome in the end. Is that so many of those games on this Game Pass will just be filled with microtransactions, will be filled with gacha, will be filled with gambling. So even if you're just paying that one monthly fee for the access to the game, quote unquote, like essentially free in a way, um, you're still paying all that extra money to actually access the main features of the game, or just paying way more than you would pay normally if you just owned that a single game or whatever. So it's like, I mean, you see that, Steam being the main monopoly of the digital storefronts, but now you have the Game Pass. But then you look at the just in general monopolization of these industries. Oh, that was the other thing I was going to talk about. But monopolization of these industries. You have Microsoft just not long ago bought Activision Blizzard, one of the biggest like game publishers or whatever, modern kind of like modern game publishers. Activision and Blizzard merged, and then Microsoft bought Activision Blizzard. So now you have this giant, and I know Microsoft is buying even more of these game publishers and game companies. Like they bought the company that does Age of Empires and stuff, and so many other ones. They just keep buying more and more. So Microsoft is just going to be this mega game publishing giant thing or whatever, just this blob of companies, all owned by one central entity or whatever. Uh, and obviously, what's that going to kind of lead to? And the thing I was going to talk about as well from that, I remembered, is that today, just today, funny enough, speaking of that, like these companies just merging into a big giant blob, is I got an email from Discovery because I have a Discover credit card. I have a Discover credit card. I have a few like two or three credit cards, different things, but the main one I have is or not the main one, but one that I have is the Discover credit card. And I just got an email from Discover saying that Discover is now merging with Capital One. So instead of being called Discover, now it's just Capital One. Like the companies have merged now. These fucking banks are merging now. I mean, as if the banks were already all controlled by one entity or whatever you want to say. Like they were already controlled mega corporation, but now it's just becoming more and more obvious. Literally, Capital One and Discover just merging, and I'm sure it's going to happen more and more with these other banks, and that's likely going to lead to what we've all been, obviously kind of expecting, is that the digital currency or whatever, is that instead of all these banks, you're just going to have like one central bank or whatever. You're going to have one probably government ran bank entity, and that's going to be the one that is borrowing or crediting or whatever all this digital currency that they'll eventually definitely be using. But just something I want to talk about is just the obvious, all these companies now, just seeing them merging together. It's like, oh yeah, we see what I can see what's going on here. No shit.
Video game distribution in the future involves nothing but transactions, where every game is free, but it's free in like quotation marks. You would get your video games for free. Let's say, just to give an example, really like the normiest thing to talk about would be like Mario Brothers, right? Maybe even Pac-Man, because everybody understands Pac-Man. Everybody should understand Mario Brothers. So I'm gonna go with Mario Brothers. Everybody's connected to.
I'm skipping through this, but I know what you're talking about in these parts. But yeah, I mean, as how does he say his username? I don't even know. Froderick? Froderick? I would usually say Frederick, but Froderick. Froderick. What he's saying, like, it's what you're describing almost, is that I know it's not that extreme. It's not, like it's hyperbole. It would be hyperbole to say that it is actually at that level. Yes, you don't really have games that are literally saying in Mario you cannot jump until you buy this microtransaction. I mean, there was a fucking indie game that was about that. There was an indie game that was about that. That was released like many years ago. I remember it was an indie game. I completely forget the name, but it was like, yeah, it was a parody of the whole microtransaction thing. Exactly what you're describing, actually. And you had to buy basic abilities. You had to buy the ability to jump. You had to buy the ability to shoot. You had to buy the ability to whatever, to shoot certain enemies, shit like that, to collect coins. You had to buy all that in game. You didn't have to buy it in the game's like storefront. But in game, you had to buy those things from the in-game storefront kind of thing. But it was a parody of that. The exact same thing. You should look it up, just because it almost describes exactly what you're describing here. And even though games might not have it at that extreme level, we are essentially almost at that point. Like, you have stuff like, is it Konami or Capcom, or like all these Capcom games or some shit like that. What was it? The most recent Dragon Dogma 2. But I guess all the Capcom games have this, but Dragon's Dogma 2, that was a pretty big controversy, was they were selling as a microtransaction stuff like in-game conveniences, like fast travel items for fast traveling you could buy with the microtransaction, as a microtransaction, stuff for like resetting your talents or whatever, or your abilities, possibly buying like literally attribute things or stuff like camping equipment, stuff you could carry more. You had to buy that. You could buy that through microtransactions, but in a lot of cases you could still get them in-game with in-game currency, but still it's the same kind of idea. It's just a slightly lesser version of that. Like, not literally you aren't able to do this unless you buy it, but being able to do microtransactions for those things that should be basic stuff in game. Something else I'm gonna say about that, I forget. But yeah, like, we are almost at that level already. Like, your dream is basically kind of what we're almost already at.
The Matrix, right, through their minds. Basics, right? You get the basic Mario Brothers package, or You know how in Mario Brothers you got different abilities, right? Just to be an asshole and explain Mario Brothers to everybody, where the premise, right, is to go right and jump on Goombas, jump on monsters or whatever, save the princess. That's the premise. That's the goal. And collect points, collect coins, blah blah blah. But in this post-humanist world, you get the base game where, let's say, instead of collecting power-ups, collecting coins, jumping on monsters, even the ability to jump or the ability to run is gatekept through a monetary system where you have to pay $1, right, or maybe even $5 to unlock your jumping ability. Like, the only thing you can really do is go right in Mario Brothers until you pay up, right? You got to be a little pay piggy for all your games, and that's how they get their money. I got to pick up my food, so pause it right here for a second. I guess I'm just gonna bitch.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't find the game I'm thinking of. But yeah, it's exactly that basically. It was a pretty old game at this point. I think it's probably nearing 10 years old. I would imagine it was a pretty old game making fun of this, parodying this. And it's definitely not this one that I'm looking at looks like way lower effort than the one I'm thinking of. It was like a side-scrolling platformer thing.
About this every time. The fucking AI robot at the Taco Bell drive-thru is so annoying.
That is hilarious. That drive-thru. I haven't been to a drive-thru in fucking like ages, man. But that is fucking hilarious. And then they have fucking AI voices taking your orders now or whatever. That is fucking funny.
Man, I would have just kept talking if I knew that dude was a game. In order to unlock your ability, I had it's like free video games. Mario Brothers, right? And the only episode's one hit, one kill, right? Downloadable content kind of culture where it was like normal to do this. Like,
I mean, once again, this is you talking about your dream. Like, we're already at that point. Like, with it being like normal like that. I don't know if there's a part in here that I want to mention this specifically, but you got the shit. I don't even know why they have a different name, but like you have these things like the gacha games. Why they even have a different name for the gacha games? I guess the difference, I even looked it up, and it's like there seems to be almost no difference between loot boxes in games and a gacha game. Like a gacha game and a loot box game are like the same fucking thing. But I guess the differences in like the gachas, they're usually from the east, like the Asian countries and stuff usually. As well as they have more like you have to get, like say in League of Legends, if you ever played the stupid shit, the way they had their microtransaction shit. But they have all these different heroes, they have all the different characters, or like Smite, whatever you want to say. You could buy the hero though. You could buy the heroes. Usually they would go through a cycle like on a weekly basis of what heroes were free to access. But if you wanted to have permanent access, quote unquote permanent access of the hero, you could buy them directly. But and stuff like if they did have a loot box system, what would usually come within those loot boxes was usually skins for those heroes, cosmetic skins, or whatever, like items. Like in Dota 2's case, they had the items and stuff for the cosmetics and stuff. But that's usually how it went. Like you could buy the heroes directly if you wanted to. But I guess in these gacha game the gacha game way is that you have the same kind of thing where you have like heroes that you can only access if you buy them. But in the gacha game stuff, you can't buy them directly. You have to play the gambling to hope to get those heroes, to hope to get those characters. I think that's the main difference. Like, you're not able to buy the stuff directly like that. You just have to gamble it. You have to gamble it. That's probably the main difference between that and loot boxes, I guess. They're both fucking scummy, manipulative, fucking cancer systems. But I guess the gacha is kind of worse in that case. I don't like either, obviously. I don't support either. But I guess the gacha is worse in that case, where it's more you have to do the gambling and you have to hope on the gambling to actually get what you might want. Like in that stupid game, like probably Blue Archive and like these Coomer games and Blue Archive, Genshin Impact, even that other game that the one guy plays sometimes, even though it's a very autistic game at this point, like Dead, unsupported, Dragon Ball: The Breakers or whatever, like that has gotcha systems in it and shit. For the basic abilities for the survivors, you need to gamble. You need to gamble. You can't buy them directly. You have to gamble, as far as I know. Um, but yeah, like we're already there. This stuff is unfortunate. Like people mostly don't agree with it, but they just accept it. Like they keep playing these fucking shitty games. They keep buying into them, even though if they don't like it, but they just keep consuming the slop. Either way, like it is normalized now.
In order to unlock, let's say, the fire flower or the mushroom, so you can get extra hits, right? So,
but I know it is not this extreme. It is not this. It is not as extreme as what you're describing extreme. Like literally unable to use basic abilities. Well, maybe actually, when I think about it, with the Dragon Ball: The Breakers, that's not exactly true either. So maybe we are already there.
you can take extra damage. That's what these power-ups are for in the game. You have to pay for it. Either you pay $1 or you pay $5 or whatever. You pay another $5, you can start collecting coins to get 1-ups. Let's say you pay another $5, now you can stomp on enemies, certain enemies, not all, right? Etc.
That'd be funny if it was like DK64, where you couldn't collect certain collectibles unless you were that specific Kong, so you had to keep switching. So you just have coins that it was like, oh, you have to pay to collect this type of coin. Yeah, in Donkey Kong 64, that'd be fucking funny as shit, dude. Donkey Kong 64 remake, remaster. That'll be the progenitor to this system. Is like, if you want to collect the yellow DK coins, you gotta buy it. You gotta buy the privilege to do that. You want to collect the purple ones, you have to buy the privilege for that.
And it was like normalized, like you get the game for free, but you have to pony up in order to do the extra shit that you normally can do. And that was in my dream, it was like, it's hard to describe like how I felt, because it was like maybe not a nightmare, like an Orwellian nightmare kind of situation, but almost like, wow, like I can actually kind of see people just going along with that, you know?
And they will, and they are.
Because that's what people kind of do anyway. Like they'll pay, they'll pony up an extra $30 for a game that's already been. Let's say, for instance, a lot of these times, these big publishers will have the developers complete the game, and then they'll like the last, maybe not the last 20%, but like a good chunk, maybe a chapter.
I don't know why, man. My fucking nose is itchy as shit today, man.
Of a game, if it's episodic, like basically, they'll break it up into 3 parts and call it episode 1, 2, and 3. Charge $70 for each episode. And that's just normal, right? Like in games like The Last of Us, or I never played The Last of Us. I think that's episodic, but right now the Final Fantasy VII remake is like that, where the whole reason my wife didn't get in.
Dude, that Final Fantasy remake, I think maybe it's just me being a contrarian, and also this Final Fantasy remake, the way people were talking about it, just in general. I think that fucking game, Final Fantasy VII, is so. This is just me. I don't know. I never played it, but just the fact that it's been talked about so much, it's the contrarian side of me speaking. I think that game is so fucking overrated.
Into Final Fantasy.
And now this remake, I saw the one guy, he was playing it, and I was just looking at it. I was like, this is fucking garbage, man. This is fucking garbage. Modern slop shit.
7 remake, even though she was looking forward to it, is that it was episodic, and not only was it episodic, the series.
And I'm glad your wife said fuck this with, basically being forced to buy a new console just to play the later episodes. Like, fuck you. That is just a big middle finger to any players. Like, oh yeah, you gotta buy the next console if you want to play the rest of the shit. Fuck you, man.
It wasn't going to continue on the PS4, and she didn't want to buy a PS5. And so she said, screw it, I don't even care anymore. Like, it's bullshit. If you bought it for the PS4, you would have to buy a PS5 in order to continue the series, right? And I don't give a fuck. I just pirate it on PC, But she wanted to play it, she wanted to play it on her PS4, right? She wanted to play all the episodes that are coming out on PS4. When she found out it's not going to be that way, she was like, screw it, But that's normalized. That's kind of normalized already, right? So that dream was kind of a reflection of what's going on right now. But it was so weird that I had a dream like that, and this weird, where the media is free, right? Maybe that can even be said for movies. Like, after, like, you watch a show, right? Let's say you watch a movie. It's a 90-minute movie. You have to pay for each 10 minutes that you watch. Like, you get through watching for 15 minutes, a little pop-up comes up, right? The first 15 minutes are free, right? And after that little pop-up pops up, if you'd like to continue watching this movie, we'll charge $5 to your credit card.
I just thought about this. It just made me think, like, just play devil's advocate. It just made me think, how would they, I would just love to see how they would even, like, have to design that in their own fucked up way to take advantage in the most ways. So they would have to, like, it would basically be like the first 2 parts of that movie, they would have to be like they would have to hook the person like hard in those first 2 parts that they pay for, so that they feel like they need to keep watching it. But then they would just pad out like the middle parts with crap, basically. And then they would have to, well, I guess they wouldn't even have to make the end parts good, because as long as they keep them invested from the start and then say, like, I have to watch it to the end now. So I guess it would basically just be, as they already do already, like with YouTube videos and stuff, you just kind of have to front load everything into the beginning and then hook you so you watch to the very end. So I guess that's probably how they would do it. They probably wouldn't change the formula that much in that sense.
Or some bullshit. And then you get, halfway through it and you decide you want to watch the whole movie, just pay $10 and watch the rest. And even after that, you don't even fucking own the movie, right? Because it was distributed software, distributed media. It's not legally yours. Because that's the way video games are now, where it's like legal wise, it's like we don't even own. Like
oh yeah, that's what I was gonna mention. I don't know if you know about that whole Stop Killing Games, Accursed Farm, the channel Accursed Farm or Accursed Farms or whatever, doing this, trying to go through this whole legal nonsense to try to basically punish this one company, or basically make an example of this one company, trying to basically say you shouldn't be allowed to just kill this game. In this case, it's called like Burnout. Is it Burnout the Crew, or just the Crew, or some shit? Some driving game where you could drive like all over the North America or some shit like that. But yeah, that's like that whole movement that they're trying to do, like all going through the bullshit legal system, which is a joke in itself, trying to do it that way, because you're never going to win in that case. But yeah, they're trying to be like the champions or whatever of like game preservation in a way, like these game companies just leaving these games to die, like actually die, no way to access them besides the online services after the fact.
The video games, especially on Steam,
yeah, and just showing that you don't own like any of the shit that you're buying, and then going through, just even if you went through like the legal, quote unquote legal agreements that you have to go when you buy any of these games, is that you don't own any of it. It's a joke, but that's what they say, like plainly, you don't own any of it, basically.
The Steam platform, it's like they make it very clear that you're simply you're granted a license. Like, you don't even own the video games. I don't even own the video games on my Steam account. It's like, fucking, there's a way.
And I haven't bought a game on Steam. Well, I did 2 like games, but that was literally just to make 2 transactions on my credit card so they wouldn't be canceled or whatever. Like, it was literally like 50 cents each, like the minimum thing I could pay for. But besides that, I haven't bought shit on Steam. But then again, I don't really play that many games anymore. So it's like, yeah.
There's a website you can go on to calculate what your Steam account is worth, and mine's easily in the thousands. You know, it's like probably 2,000. And like I don't even own that. It's not even.
Oh yeah, that's one of the big things I was gonna say, is that this is like the case with Valve, is like, so I don't know if you ever watched the channel, this guy, he mostly talks about TF2, is that this channel, Zesty Jesus, um Zesty Jesus, and Zesty Jesus, or Zesty's alt, I think he isn't, but he makes a lot of videos, and he's considered like the guy who speaks the truth, the painful truth that many of the people that cope within that community don't want to talk about, it seems, or don't want to admit. So they kind of like all demonize him in a way. But yeah, he's talked about this, and it's completely true and like obvious when you think about it. So Valve has multiple games at this point that they have. Like, Valve was kind of the originator of the loot box and the microtransaction stuff through the game TF2, Team Fortress 2. They were kind of like the originator of that idea. Like, that Team Fortress 2 was like one of the first games that had like a very successful like system of that, of loot boxes with their crates. You had to buy a key to unlock the crates, and then you get like a random item from that crate that has stuff like, it could be like having unusual effects, like unusual like graphical effects and stuff like that, or have like various other things, just gambling. Um, so they were like the originators of this Team Fortress in Team Fortress 2, but then they used that system in their other games as well, obviously, seeing how much success it had. So when they made CS, Counter-Strike Go, or Counter-Strike Global Offensive, which is, I think Counter-Strike Go is their big cash cow now, or maybe not. Maybe it's Counter-Strike 2. I don't know. One of the Counter-Strikes that they made is like their biggest cash cow of a game. And that has a loot box system in the same kind of way. And they have like weapon skins and shit like that from the loot box system, the gambling. And it's like, supposedly makes them like alone billions of dollars. And then they have stuff like Dota 2, where Dota 2 has the whole loot box system as well. I don't even know if Valve has. Yeah, I guess they do. They have the Deadlock, the shitty piece of shit game that they just released. Deadlock probably has the exact same stuff, I would imagine. Like, so yeah, Valve was like the originator kind of this loot box microtransaction system in that sense. Uh, but Team Fortress 2 was the original game that I was in. And then over the years, Valve has neglected and left TF2 like almost like abandoned in some ways. Like, it was the game that kind of like originated their success in the kind of game sphere to an extent, sort of. Like, not really, but like it was one of the bigger kind of games in that sense from that time. But they've kind of left it to rot. But while TF2 is left to rot, they don't just kind of shut the servers down or whatever. They don't kind of just shut the game down, because if they did do that, the microeconomy of all their other games would be affected massively as well, because people have spent thousands and tens of thousands of dollars on TF2's digital items, the digital items in Team Fortress 2 from the whole loot box system. Now, if Valve decided to just kill Team Fortress 2, pull the plug and everything, this would have a knock-on effect. At least in theory, this would have a massive knock-on effect on their other games that have the same kind of microeconomies, because all those people would be saying, oh shit, all these digital pixels that I bought from Valve, they are finite. They have a limited lifetime, because Look what Valve did to their original microeconomy. They shut it down. They killed it. So these people think the theory is, and I think it does make complete sense, honestly, is that the only reason TF2 really is still alive, that Valve even like does any support to it at all, is because if they did shut it down, then it would destroy the confidence in all of the other microeconomies of all their other games, because then people would just say, well, now all my pixels are worthless because Valve has proved they could just shut the even though that is obvious from the start, they could do that. But these people are idiots. But if they saw it, I guess, in action instead of just the potential of it, if they saw it in action, then that would destroy all confidence in their other microeconomies, which would have a massive impact on their the viability of them or whatever. But why did I mention that? I know I wanted to talk about that, but like just kind of the idea uh, of these kind of microeconomies in these games.
Mine, like the account illegally.
Oh yeah, and I guess the same thing could be said for uh, Valve's the storefront, the Valve storefront. Like your games, as soon as whatever happened, as soon as Valve like shuts down, like shuts its doors for good, which I'm sure it won't, because these mega corporations, they never die. But you know what I mean. But the idea that if Valve did shut down, if Valve did go bankrupt or whatever, which they won't, but if they did, all that digital stuff, all those digital items you bought, they're all worthless. They're gone. Um, your access to them is gone. Um, and that's kind of like the thing is that I was trying to mention with the example of these microeconomies within these games. The digital thing, like you don't own any of that, because as soon as the servers go down, your purchase is void. You don't own any of that. You don't have any physical thing to pull back from and like use that for something. It's kaput. It's kaput. It's gone. Um, like my brothers, everybody else's Steam libraries, if Valve shut down, all that shit just gone.
I probably own the account, right? Because it's my information, supposedly. Ain't no telling what legal shenanigans, you know, are wrapped up in that. But 20 years from now, 30 years from now, when I'm 60 years,
And that's the case with all of these digital storefronts, not just Valve, but all of them.
70.
And okay, I know GOG, good old games or whatever. I know that has that whole thing where it's like, oh yeah, the executable, you could download it directly. I still don't trust. I've seen the incompetence of GOG from my experience with Daggerfall Unity and what they did with that bullshit. They tried to do with that bullshit, uh, uploading it or putting on GOG and all that shit. I've seen and you can see it from their games and everything, like Cyberpunk and all that shit. Uh, and the new Witcher or whatever that's coming out. But good old games, they are not something that you should trust, that anybody should trust either. I don't care what the fucking bullshit says. Oh yeah, it's not DRM. Sure, it's probably better than having these systems of DRM technically, but at the end of the day, you still don't own any of that shit. You still don't own that fucking game at the end of the day. If your PC that had that launcher or executable or whatever goes away, or the software itself just stops being supported, you still don't own it. It's gone. It doesn't fucking matter. So no matter what people saying like, oh yeah, championing these things as being different than that, they're fucking not.
Is Steam? What is Steam gonna look like? What are platforms like GOG or what's the other one? Epic Games, that fucking garbage fire. Like what are their distribution platforms gonna look like 30 years from now, 40 years from now? These publishers, you know, when it comes to normies, they get away with everything.
I mean, and if you want to see like the aids of like the microtransactions on these digital storefronts too, just go on like say this game like Stellaris, like any one of these big 4X games that's released by like I forget what the publisher is, Firaxis I think Firaxis is the company. Like the amount of microtransactions in like all of their games, like the storefront is like you just got to scroll like 20 years for just how many different microtransaction bullshit that they shove into their games over like a few years. It is absurd.
because people are just that stupid and that gullible. This has turned into a rant. This is going to turn into a rant about downloadable content and the promises, supposedly the promises of digital media was going to give, right? Like paperback books and hardcover books right now are the same fucking price as a digital version of a book. Y'all want to
Yeah, that is pretty hilarious. And it's just, and as you say, in a few minutes, it's the same shit with the games. Like, at least from what I remember, I was thinking like, yeah, you got these big sales mostly on Steam that you could, oh yeah, I could get this game for like $5, instead of like 50 or some shit. But most of the time, like the games that are like brand new, you're not getting any like you're not getting any price difference like between the physical copy and, I mean, I know the physical copies are barely even physical anymore. Like they just give you a key with your quote unquote physical copy. But even before that became like a thing that was more common, you'd get the disc. It'd be like $60, and you get the thing on the first, like the day one release on digital, and it would still be $60. You're not getting any fucking savings from the digital bullshit. Um, and yeah, from the books, like I still have the 1984 book somewhere. I still have the Hobbit and even the other Lord of the Rings books that I bought like a few years back. I still have them. Um, I still have plenty of physical games as well. I sold a lot of my cartridge-based games like many years back on like eBay and shit. Um, in retrospect, I probably shouldn't have, but it was like whatever. At the end of the day, I just fucking emulate the shit anyway. Who really gives a shit at this point? But yeah, like those days are like over. Obviously, those days have been long over.
explain to me, like that should be like the ultimate, one of the big reality breakdowns, right? And a lot of the first grade truth is going to go, oh, it's just corporate greed. It's like, no, man, it's meant to demoralize. Like, it's meant for fucking assholes like me to notice and be like, that's not right, and get all wrapped up, get all angry and pissed off about it. It's like, that's bullshit. That digital books are the same fucking price as physical books. And the whole, like, I remember when down
Man, you should have seen when I went to college for a short spat. Oh my God, the biggest scam was the college library like book system. Oh my God, it's just like, and people they just go along with it. It's like, holy shit, how retarded people are.
downloadable content was first, how do I put it, marketed to people back in like, shit, I want to say maybe the beginning of 2000, probably right after the job application, right? That wouldn't surprise me, but downloadable content was like a promise to the consumer. Like, it was marketed as an option for consumers to, it's like, oh, we can continue on with the video game. We make a video game, right? Their publishers saying, oh, we make video games. Your favorite video game can have this downloadable content while we have our developers continue making games or continue making content for that game, right? That was the promise. Extra $20, and it's not that at all, right? Obviously, extra $20 will get you the expanded story while we keep developing it. No, they didn't do that at all. What they do now, and that's not true for everybody, right? But what they do now is that I gotta stop by the store and replace that root beer. That was for my daughter. Anyway, so the promise was, developers get to have a job, right? That's one thing. The consumer benefits because their favorite video game story or whatever game gets continued, right? Like you play, let's say for instance, Mario Brothers, just to give the example, World 1 through 8 in the base game, the developers, after the game publishes, right, the developers still have their job. They're still making levels, right? Oh, they're making levels for Mario Brothers. Now we got Mario Brothers A, B, C, and D, World A, B, C, and D, continuing after World 8. And they can go, did I pass Dollar General? I think I did. Now they can go, oh, we got these extra levels for y'all. Thanks.
And it's funny too because back in the days they actually kind of had an excuse with the like limitations of storage on like these cartridges and stuff. Like they would say, we weren't able to fit all these levels onto one cartridge, so we made like another one kind of shit. But nowadays, like you have fucking the infinite internet download speed or whatever. So like there is no excuse anymore for that. It's just the excuse besides quote unquote greed, or the excuse of, as you're saying, the actual like reason, demoralization or whatever, following the script of reality, whatever they're trying to do.
To the hard work of our developers, right? And I gotta turn around. Shit, I was talking. And now they can. It's like supposed to be like a good customer service thing that kind of benefits the consumer, and it's not like that at all. Fucking 30 years later, and it's been just demolished, right? Consumer trust has been demolished, and this shit is normalized. Like, publishers taking advantage of the consumers is just normalized by this point. Everybody expects everybody expects these big publishers to just be pieces of shit.
And it's funny too is that everybody expects that, and they see that, but then even that just means that even the ones that do even like a slightly better job than the others, they just get lauded as like the best things in the world, even though like a lot of times they're still kind of pieces of shit. Like I think, even though it's probably not the best example, maybe the Deep Rock Galactic developer, they went full on kind of like sort of greedy mode in a way, even though that was like they were kind of lauded as like, oh man, they're the best developer, they're so good to the consumer, they're so good to the players and everything. But then you kind of see them what they were kind of going towards, like instead of working on Deep Rock Galactic more, they were like, all right, well now we're just gonna make another game, call it Rogue Core, which is like the exact same kind of game with like a slightly different theming and everything. I don't know. But then people just suck their dicks like, and like any of these examples, like even just a slightly good thing, and people just suck their dicks like endlessly.
It's fucking crazy.
And then it makes them invincible and invincible to any criticism at all, even though they deserve it just as much as any other ones.
It was supposed to. The big promise of digital media was that the price was going to go down. And y'all know as well as I do that that hasn't happened at all. Physical media and digital media are the same fucking price still. Like it was gonna be like, oh, we're gonna pass on the savings.
Man, I'm so glad I'm not a Nintendo person anymore. Like I have not been for a very long time. I'm so glad nowadays I'm especially not a Nintendo person, because fuck.
To our consumers, right? To our customers, I mean. Well, might as well be consumers. And that didn't happen either. It's like downloadable content expansions for video games are still $60. Our video games are $60 now, going on $80. Nintendo with their new Mario Kart game, $80 fucking dollars, man. Digital. This is not physical. This is ridiculous, y'all. It's fucking insane. Like, I don't know. Maybe this dream this dream video turned into a weird rant about the promises. But this is a good subject. Like, this is an interesting subject to me. It's a reality breakdown. Like, especially with the book thing. Like, digital books should not, like, absolutely should not be the same price as a fucking hardcover book. It's like.
But it is interesting. Like people do talk about these things, but they don't talk about it as much as they should, because this should be a constant thing being talked about, as you're like saying, like that doesn't make any sense. Why would, like, this, and this has been going on for decades now, that doesn't make any sense. Why would a digital book cost just as much as a physical book? Like, there is no good reason for that at all, and it's just everybody just kind of like, they just accept it now.
They sold it to us as this, I don't know, this crusade for the environment, right? They're always, these fucking people are always tacking on their bullshit. Like the last video I talked about, where the feminist movement were just used by corporations to push cigarettes.
The environment is, it's funny, unfortunately, but the environment is like the biggest scapegoat or whatever for like everything that not everything, but so many things. Like even shit like the banks trying to be fucking, or not even just the banks, just all these like just all these entities that would mail you stuff like bills or whatever. Like, oh yeah, go paperless. Like, oh yeah, it's not because it's not for the obvious reasons, because there's no real reason that going paperless helps the the consumer or whatever, the customer at all. It's 100% just for their benefit, but then they just give the bullshit reason of, oh yeah, help the environment, go green.
cigarettes and all that other nonsense. It's always about selling a product. Anytime you hear the word environment, or you hear the word feminism, or you hear the word red pilled, even for either the manosphere or whatever, it's always about selling a product.
And you should hear some of these channels that my dad listens to, like these supposedly conservative channels and shit, and they're fucking grifters, just hawking their fucking bullshit, like almost always one of these idiots fucking oh yeah, buy gold. Dude, why would why would somebody be advertising others to buy gold when the idea of gold is that it's supposed to go up in value or whatever? So that means that the people that are selling the gold would have to be like, oh yeah, give me your fiat currency for the stuff that is supposedly worth way more than that. So you're telling me that that the people selling it are the idiots, but then the people buying it are the smart ones. So the ones that are owning the gold already, they have to be selling it to these people. But then you'd have to say right away, like, it takes like one brain cell to even to figure this out. Why the fuck would the sellers be selling it for this supposedly worthless currency, fiat currency, to these people that are buying it? Like, fucking right away, I'm just like, oh my god, these people are so fucking dumb.
Some
I
fucking
mean, obviously, but it's like, Jesus.
idiot. Separate some moron.
Or even more so, the shit where they fucking these prepper bullshit channels that are always like, oh yeah, buy these MREs, these meal ready to eats, but then like nothing ever happens. There's never any like you need for that kind of bullshit ever. And then they get so excited. They're like, oh man, I get the electricity went out for like 5 hours. I had the opportunity to use my bullshit, overly priced MRE nonsense garbage, meal ready to eat.
With their money. It's like, oh, it's green, right? It's a digital book, it's green, but we're gonna charge you fucking $30 anyway. And by the way, if you get the paperback, that's $30 too. Thanks for your money, stupid. Thanks for the money, dummy. To quote the great.
Yeah, I know. I remember that from DSP. Before you said it, I was thinking like, what was that from? I forget what I listened to one of those channels for a little while years back that talked about DSP all the time. One of the tractor channels, and yeah, they use that sound bit a lot. Thanks for the money, dummy.
Great DSP. Anyway, y'all, I think that's all I wanted to cover. Let me know what y'all think. Take it easy.
Yeah, I think I said everything I was going to say on that. But yeah, definitely a interesting dream you had. You sure you were dreaming and not just looking out the window? Because that's basically what we already got now in essence. But yeah, anyway, this video's gone on for way longer than it needs to, as usual, almost an hour and a half. But thanks for the topic to talk about, the video and the other community post stuff. But yeah, thanks for that, and anybody, thanks for listening, and take care, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.